how it's going to affect China, how China is going to get an edge with this type of technology. And I think knowing China, there's going to be automation is probably going to go into hyperdrive in China in the next 10 years.
Welcome back to Metals and Miners. I'm its founder and its host, Gary Bohn. Today we've got a fantastic discussion lined up. We're fortunate to have with us Eric Yeung, based out of Hong Kong. Eric owns and operates a company that contracts out manufacturing to Chinese factories on behalf of global retail companies and chains. He's been analyzing the gold market since 2009. He shares his analysis of the gold and silver markets on X. I asked Eric to come on today to discuss the implications, the ramifications, et cetera, of what's going on with the DeepSeek AI rollout by China. Eric, welcome back to Metals and Miners. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Gary. It's a pleasure.
So OpenAI's ChatGPT-4 was built on the latest and the most expensive NVIDIA H100 GPU chips. Their strategy clearly reflects a choice to use the best technology regardless of the cost. DeepSeek's incredible efficiency in comparison is raising major eyebrows, and it's proving what can be done without the use of the latest and the most expensive technology and infrastructure. DeepSeek's success challenges the idea that the best results necessarily require the most powerful and the most expensive tools. What are the implications here moving forward? How will development companies expect their teams to perform moving forward? What about investors? Does this completely change the game, and if so, how?
Well, I think, Gary, with this current situation with DeepSeek, definitely, I do believe that the Max 7 companies in the US would have to be revalued by investors, because now we're getting into a phase where Chinese companies can directly compete with US companies at least high value add level of manufacturing, in both, in this particular case, is software, right? But hardware as well. China is catching up on the hardware side. So the US better do something.
So you see a revaluation coming.
I see a revaluation unless they start differentiating themselves and branching out to something else.
Okay.
I'm talking about the Max 7. Yep.
Yeah, I understand. All right, so Eric, unlike most Western large language models, DeepSeek's version 3, it's open source, meaning anyone can inspect it, use it, modify it, et cetera. How much of a game changer is that versus the closed proprietary systems that all the presumed AI leaders have been deploying and developing over the last couple of years?
Well, not only that, Gary, you can also download DeepSeek on your laptop and you can run it there. And there's speculation that you can probably in the future run it on your phone. That's why you see that Apple stock actually went up when the DeepSeek news came out. It didn't fall with everything else. It went up in value, because what DeepSeek demonstrated is that in the future, every iPhone, every iPad can have something similar, or maybe even using the DeepSeek's open source code, right, embedded in your mobile device. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, and how does the open source code in this particular situation impact other development? I mean, isn't everything going to have to move towards that open source code, which kind of takes away some of the edge from those who are developing something?
Depends on your perspective, right? If you are in the Silicon Valley and you're dumping, $500 billion into an AI system where you're hoping to make, $1 trillion down the road because you're charging 90% margin, you're in trouble. Because this open source approach obviously don't support that, right? But if you are a country like China, where you want to encourage, companies to thrive using this technology, right, then it makes sense. Because their input cost is, as I understand, only around $5 to $6 million for DeepSeek.
Amazing.
It's not $500 billion, right? So I think to answer your question, is you have to consider the input cost basically to your output, right? Whereas like in the US, to do anything like this, you got to put in hundreds of billions of dollars. So to answer your question again, I think going forward it will be difficult for the US to continue down this path on this if this thing is open source and is going to continue to be open source, right? It's going to be difficult for the US to compete, and the Mag 7 companies, the US may have to pivot and do something else that China is not doing right now. That's what I see. And to tell you the truth, Gary, right? It's not only me saying it. There are lots of other people saying it. A lot of other people who are smarter than me saying it on X.
Yeah. And there's a lot of uncertainty, and I think that's right now surrounding this because of all the unknowns. There's a lot of known unknowns, and there's a lot of unknown unknowns here surrounding this, and it's creating some alarm because of the amount of concentration that's in the Mag 7. It's introduced a lot of risk, which we're going to talk about here in a moment. But with an AI model this inexpensive as DeepSeek has delivered, it's going to almost assuredly usher in a new era. Many new AI products and experiences can now emerge, trying to win the hearts and minds of the global populace because the cost of development is going to drop so significantly. That being the case, do you see all of that new AI application and experience that's going to come out of this into this new era replacing human workers somehow in some way? And, how concerned should we be with that?
Well, it's definitely going to replace some human workers, right? For example, like what I do, for example, right? Let's say in the past, if I write a business plan, I might hire an assistant to help me with that because I'm a busy guy. I'm a busy businessman. I have many things I have to do, right? So I would write an outline and then I would give it to my assistant, and that person would, do research, put in additional information, and then properly, put all that together into a proper business plan, right? But my understanding is that, and I actually tried it myself with, with the Grok AI through X, you can pretty much do all that with AI. So you don't need a, like that type of job is being eliminated essentially, right? And it's the same thing with graphics artists. I used to, when I wanted something professionally done in terms of graphics, I used to have to hire somebody to draw that. Right now, I can just use AI, and it'll give me 100 different options to choose from. Right.
So, Eric, are you expecting an increased proliferation of AI products because of the cheap, because we're going to see cheaper development costs, and with that proliferation, will that speed up the replacement of human workers?
I think for white collar human workers, if you're doing a job that can be immediately replaced by the current AI, yeah, it's going to happen. Probably rather quickly in the next couple of years, right? But there's still many jobs that AI cannot replace. I mean, if you are in a carpenter, let's say, or a plumber, AI can't replace that right now.
Right now.
Right now, right? That's my opinion on the matter, right?
Yeah.
Maybe in 20 years, you have a robot,
right.
doing carpentry work and fixing your pipes, right? But not right now.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay, well, let's shift over here. Eric, we've been told that the AI needs are so energy intensive compared to the technology energy needs that we have grown accustomed to. DeepSeek has proven a dramatically lower cost business model that doesn't require as much energy. Are there legitimate concerns about how much power will actually be needed to power AI into the future now with this DeepSeek development?
Well, I think, it's like this, right? It's like the PC. I remember Bill Gates said something back in the 1980s. I think he said, like, all you need is like 246 kilobytes of data. Something like that, right? I forgot the exact quote, like the Bill Gates, whatever he said, right? But basically, my point is being whatever power that we can generate, I'm sure that the more advanced AI being developed, and it's going to be developed in the future, it's going to use it all up. So yes, DeepSeek is using less power, but that only means that more AI and more powerful AI is going to be developed using the DeepSeek model.
Yeah. And so the reason why I brought up that question
Yeah.
is because, we saw uranium take a hit 2 days ago, when NVIDIA took a hit, and people started questioning whether we're going to need the same level of nuclear power plants, et cetera, 5, 10, 15 years from now with the deployment of AI. But I think your point is so critically important. It's that as the costs drop, and let me see if I could phrase this properly to what you just said, as the cost of AI development drops, the proliferation of AI is going to explode. Therefore, even if the energy needs per AI utilization is lower, it's actually going to expand quicker because of the utilization is expanding quicker.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I don't see like nuclear power usage or requirement being less in any way, shape, or form going forward. I hold uranium miners myself. Haven't sold a single one.
So that was a panic move by the market.
Oh yeah, I think that's the case. And especially the fact that, like, China is really trying hard to decrease its dependence on oil.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you look at the data, Chinese crude oil imports actually went down in 2023-24, but its electricity consumption went up, straight up.
Mm-hmm.
So, as we all know, nuclear power is better suited for generating electricity versus crude oil, right?
Yeah.
So in my opinion, yeah, I don't see anything turning back, like in terms of like nuclear power on that side.
And to your point, over there in China, the electrical grid utilization is going straight up, in part because of the proliferation of EVs that are happening over there. It's just blowing out. And it's just getting started. Yeah. So if it's possible, let's turn over to NVIDIA here for a moment. If it's possible for Chinese companies to use shell companies in Singapore or other countries to buy otherwise sanctioned or export controlled chips from NVIDIA and use them for AI development, the powers that be they're going to want to investigate and adjudicate it, but can it really be stopped? I mean, it seems similar to the U.S. saying, no Russian oil will be allowed to be sold, so they sanction it. But then India buys the Russian oil and they resell it on the market. And so the oil made it to the market one way or another, regardless of the sanctions. So won't that be the case for these NVIDIA chips, these most advanced chips in the world? I mean, can the U.S. really stop them from making their way to China?
The U.S. can stop it, but it means that the NVIDIA stock price is going to take a huge dump. I mean, they could have stopped it last year, did they?
Clearly,
I think it's a political decision, right? I mean, if they really want to stop it, they can. But they didn't. I think it's a political decision. I mean, so I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does.
Going
Okay,
forward.
so
Yes. Yeah.
Eric, the innovation from China speaks to how, and a lot of people are saying this, how asleep everyone's been for the last 15 years in the Western world. Investors and corporations alike, they've been running towards the big money, shiny object spending programs. By the way, AI is not the first and it won't be the last, where folks have thrown hundreds of billions of dollars at a problem versus thinking through the problem more cleverly and using resource constraints as an enabler. If resource constraints are the new mandate, and in light of the DeepSeek developments, they likely have to be, what does that mean for the current workforce? Are you expecting some layoffs and job function consolidations coming in the tech space? What are we looking at here? And won't that also put pressure on those seeking their first jobs as they leave college? Did finding a job out of college in that area just get that much harder?
Well, the U.S. employment situation is very complex, right? On one hand, you have many, you know, the owners of the Max 7 always say they need more qualified people. But every year there are, people coming out from U.S. universities who study engineering. They can't get a job in engineering. I mean, the U.S. don't want to train these guys, like these Max 7 companies. But at the same time, they're asking the Donald Trump government to double the H-1B program, to import more Indians to fill these jobs. So what does that tell you, Gary? Isn't that like a contradiction in itself?
Yeah, very much so.
What I think essentially is happening is that, just take away all the smoke and mirrors. I think they just want to lower the cost. They don't want to hire American workers because American workers are more expensive than whoever they're importing from India, China, or whatever through the H-1B program. And in terms of let's say if the AI development actually contracts, I don't know, because Donald Trump just announced that they will dump $500 billion into the sector. Yeah, $500 billion. Sorry, $500 billion into the sector, right? So I really don't know if they will start firing people or go through a consolidation process like post 2000 because of what's happening right now.
Yeah. So again, the known knowns and the known and the unknown unknowns. There's so many questions here, and I brought you in just so we can get your viewpoint, where you're located, what you're doing. I think it's important to hear, from you, and so I appreciate all your answers, and even the ones that you can't answer fully. So, all right, so let's go over to startups here in the AI space. If the DeepSeek technology disrupts the AI market, and in a sense that, you have all this money currently out there by investors, and there, startups are popping up, and even the ones that haven't popped up yet, but that are trying to get started and have a certain amount of a budget and expectations and a roadmap laid out. But now here comes the DeepSeek technology, kind of disrupts the AI market, shows it could be done at a fraction of the cost. That might lead to some widespread failures in AI startups. How could a potential influx of used NVIDIA GPU chips, similar to the influx of secondhand Cisco equipment seen in the aftermath of the dot-com bubble bursting, how could that impact NVIDIA's future revenue, market share, market cap, et cetera?
My views on NVIDIA is that it's overvalued. I think, based on what you just said, maybe NVIDIA will drop by half the stock price. It's possible. But obviously, a lot of people don't want to hear that, right? And the powers that be don't want that to happen. So they have to perpetuate the narrative somehow. I'm sure that they are trying to figure out how to spin the story as we speak right now. Yeah.
Yeah, and because of the concentration risk in all of the mutual funds and everybody's retirement plans, and not just here in the United States, but around the world, it's pretty dubious. So you were mentioning a moment ago about the 500 billion Stargate announcement. So, Eric, in addition to the ChatGPT-like model DeepSeek, they just dropped another open source AI model called Janus Pro 7B. I'm not sure if you saw this.
Yes.
It can generate images, and it beats OpenAI's version called DAL-E3 across multiple benchmarks. All of these AI developments are incredible, but my question is, I find it interesting that it comes on the heels, literally, what, a week or a couple of days after President Trump had announced the $500 million Stargate announcement, where he's trying to position the U.S. as the global leader in AI. Do you believe that there is a direct correlation in the timing of these drops?
Absolutely. I mean, like, do you believe in coincidences? I mean, come on, right? Like,
so this is part of a broader war. That's
absolutely. Look at the military-industrial complex on China's side, right? China announced, I think it was in December, that it got, is test flying the 6th generation bombers, 6th generation fighters, and 6th generation drones, if I dare call it that, right? I mean, China also has hypersonic missiles, new aircraft carriers, smaller size ones, but they launched it recently in December as well, right? And what just happened recently? China announced that it made a big breakthrough in the nuclear fusion technology. Mm-hmm. Like the plasma was able to hold itself for 17 minutes approximately, right? I think that breaks the world record by like 200%, even more than that.
Wow.
And then I think just 2 days ago, China announced that it has a satellite that can beam down information that is significantly higher in speed and bandwidth than what Starlink can do, like Elon Musk's company, right? So yes, I think this is all timed, and it's all happening within a very short time frame.
Yeah, so there's a lot of implications there. Okay, so
absolutely,
yeah. All right, so I do have a question pertaining to war and weapons coming up, but Morgan Stanley. They estimate that the 4 largest U.S. tech companies will collectively spend up to $300 billion this year on AI infrastructure. Now, this was before the DeepSeek release. So in terms of economic impact, AI-related investments, they're poised to surpass the GDP share driven by the late 1990s dot-com boom and could rival the contribution of housing during the 2000s real estate bubble. That was all before, okay? So does the DeepSeek developments change this in terms of giving them pause to actually deploy this level of capital, or does it give them pause on how they deploy this level of capital?
I think the second option is probably the option they'll take. Like, they're going to deploy the capital. It's just how they're going to do it and how they're going to pivot to do it.
Okay.
Very good question, by the way, right? Like, we can go into like a completely different direction from this point if you want to. Yes. Like, what's happening in the US right now, right? Are you familiar with Peter Thiel?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So, he has guys on X who talks a lot about the very topic that you're talking about. Like, now that AI is being caught up by China, and that they can do it at such a lower cost, what is the U.S. going to do, right? And one of these fellows, Matthew Pines, he said, why not, pivot to NHI technology, which in that circle means non-human intelligence. Isn't that crazy? It's
Yeah.
like totally off tangents, right? But there are a lot of people, a lot of serious people who are discussing that.
I mean, I don't
Yeah,
see the largest companies in the world, these tech companies. I don't see the largest companies in the world tucking tail and running away. I mean, we're at the
yeah,
beginning of this proliferation of AI, not at the end. And so, it's probably more a battle for survival, winner. I don't know if it's winner take all, but a battle for survival. And those guys, they're going to play for keeps for sure. But I think the risk that China has introduced into the equation here with this extremely low cost, equally or greater capable, capability, is showing, are the Mag 7 wasting 300 billion, 500 billion a year or whatever? But to your point, they're going to have really no choice but to pivot. How they pivot remains to be seen. But I agree with you. I think they're going to deploy the capital rather than hold back. It's just how are they going to do it?
yeah. It's a tough one. Like I said,
Yeah.
if they're pulling out the UFO alien card, they're pretty desperate. They're pretty desperate. That's all I can say.
Yeah. All right. So,
So
Eric,
aliens.
the divergence in performance between U.S. and Chinese tech stocks since the pandemic highlights the shifting dynamics in global markets. The U.S. firms, they've enjoyed all the spoils for the last 5 years. If DeepSeek's AGI model proves as efficient and cost-effective as advertised, the relative advantage enjoyed by U.S. firms could realistically and should realistically diminish. DeepSeek's maneuver of open sourcing R1 further undermines the competitive barriers of major U.S. tech firms. While some like Microsoft and Meta, they're going to see some cost benefits from reduced CapEx, but current valuations are like 30 times earnings or more. That seems kind of hard to justify in a much more competitive environment. Do you see a lightening up on U.S. tech stocks? I'm not saying a huge rotation out and they disappear. I'm just saying, do you see a lightening up on U.S. tech stocks moving forward in terms of a rotation out of some percentage? And in addition, are China's equities back in play here, or where do you see that money going if you do
It's
see a lightening up?
Was possible that they rotate somewhat out of U.S. tech stocks and into Chinese stocks, as well as the natural resources sector, like mining, for example, right? Maybe gold and silver, for example. So I do see that. But whether or not the tech stocks will implode remains to be seen, because they seem to be rebounding right now.
Yeah.
I don't know about today. I haven't checked, but they rebounded yesterday. So,
Well, that's why I said lightening
yeah,
up because,
yeah,
pre-COVID, pre-pandemic, I think Apple was the closest to a trillion market cap, but there wasn't any other company over a trillion. Now, granted, there was 40, 50 trillion around the world printed and put into existence after that. And, now we see before this DeepSeek, with NVIDIA at 3.5 or 3.7 trillion, we had what, 5, 6, 7 companies that were over 3 trillion. We'd never seen that before. So,
yeah.
is it realistic that the market caps might get shaved from, let's say, that 3 trillion level down to 2 trillion, 2.25 trillion, whatever, not a flattening, but a lightening up, just because of the risk that's been introduced here?
It's absolutely possible. Like this might play out like the Nifty 50 in the 1970s, like a period of stagnation, right? That's what I see.
Yeah.
I
So
mean, it's possible. Yeah.
yeah, it seems very possible. So, another interesting development was alongside the tech stocks that did get whacked hard that day. They have rebounded, but crypto got whacked really hard. The key question is what is the correlation between crypto and DeepSeek? Why did crypto drop so hard that day alongside some of those tech names?
It's the same people with the same bunch of money going into crypto. It's the tech bros, right? So crypto, if you take the Bitcoin chart and put it right beside the Nasdaq charts, it's almost that they basically correlate each other almost 90% in terms of their moves. So if the tech companies go down in value, it's going to drag Bitcoin with it, most likely.
Okay.
That's what it looks like. Yeah.
Let's stay on this concentration risk theme for a moment. There's so much of it built up in the markets. It's really at historic levels. Every single mutual fund around the world and everybody's retirement, regardless of what the mutual fund, stands for, has some or all of the Mag 7 in it because the portfolio managers were all chasing, the yield, the gains. So
Yes.
what could the depths of the carnage be if DeepSeek or another technology or another event of some kind truly pops this highly concentrated AI tech stock bubble?
It's just so difficult to predict how a bubble is going to pop and like how it implodes. And maybe it doesn't implode. Like I said, maybe it grinds down like the 1970s, like the Nifty 50. Maybe it grinds for like 2 years and then it goes down 20%.
But even that
I think that's what happened.
that kind of grinding down
Yeah.
would be significantly painful for so many, wouldn't it?
Yes. Well, the only reason why I say it might grind down is because there's so much liquidity in the space right now, in the market, right? So it might just prop it up, go sideways, grind down over a number of years. I think that's something that Michael Oliver has been saying for a while. I think he was on your show, right? You interviewed Michael Oliver. Yes. So that's his thesis. I believe it's possible that happens going forward.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Eric, since the DeepSeek drop, new Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is advocating for gradual universal tariffs, starting at 2.5%, rising monthly, potentially reaching 20%. Now, you and I were discussing this tariff issue, before we got on here and to record. Canada and Mexico, they're being threatened with tariffs as high as 25% as soon as next week. Trump himself announced imminent tariffs targeting foreign computer chips, pharmaceuticals, steel, aluminum, and copper. The trade war has escalated clearly, and there's really no end in sight to it. America's neighbors, they're feeling the pressure first as the Trump administration readies itself for what appears to be the ultimate economic confrontation with China. What do you see being the end game here with what the Trump administration really wants to accomplish? Is it something currency, trade, materials control related? Is it something else? A lot is spoken about the cards that the U.S. can play and very little of the cards that China can play in this war. So what does the Trump administration really want to accomplish, and what is the downside potential of escalating this trade war with China?
Okay, so I think first of all, I think the tariffs on Canada and Mexico is real. And do you know how much the U.S. buy silver that the U.S. buys from Mexico and Canada? 75%. 75% of all imports of silver, that the U.S. import into the U.S., right, is from Mexico and Canada. 75%. That's a lot, right? So let's say if the tariffs actually go through on Canada and Mexico, that means it's uneconomical to import both silver and gold into the U.S. from Canada and Mexico. Not only that, any gold bars or silver bars that are originated in Canada and Mexico, will be eligible for these tariffs. You see the big change that is about to happen, right?
Yeah.
That's what's going to happen, right? So basically, Bob Coleman did a very deep analysis on this, and basically what is happening, it's not only me saying it, not just Bob Coleman saying it, but today Financial Times is saying it. There's a run on good delivery gold and silver bars in London. So the American players at the COMEX, they want to make sure that they have enough good delivery gold and silver bars in the US so that, like, if the tariffs actually go through on February 1st, they have enough physical to cover for whatever shorts that I'm talking about paper short positions, right? That they have on gold and silver at the COMEX. So that is what's happening right now. But let's say the tariffs actually go through. And, like I just said, it's uneconomical to import gold and silver from Mexico and Canada, or gold and silver bars that are originated from, Canada and Mexico. What will happen? What that means is that in the future, the LBMA, which is in London, can no longer borrow gold and silver bars from SLV and GLD from New York. Now, why do I say that? Because once the tariffs go through, then the US players, they need the gold and silver bars that are residing in the US for themselves. They can no longer let some third party in London borrow or take that physical gold and silver. Okay? So
Okay.
what that means, out of all that, what I just said, is that if the tariffs happen, right, it will seriously cripple the LBMA paper gold and silver manipulation. That's my conclusion. But all that hinges on the fact that the US actually goes through with the tariffs on Canada and Mexico, right? If it doesn't happen, then all this, it just unwinds, right? But like, if it happens, everything I just said is going to happen.
So Eric, do
Yes.
you see what you just described as the main purpose behind the tariffs that are being threatened by the Trump administration around the world on various countries, or is that just a byproduct? And if it's just a byproduct, what do you think the end game is for the Trump administration? What are they trying to get accomplished here? What are they trying to change by implementing these?
I think they're playing. I think like this term has been thrown around like on X all the time, but I think the Trump administration is really playing 4D chess here. 4D chess, right? What I mean by that is, let's say these tariffs are real. He goes through with it on February 1st, right? What I believe is brilliant that may be achieved by doing that is that they actually would kick off a new round of gold and silver revaluation without, getting the normal kind of like political opposition that they would get if they use another route. So let's say like, Donald Trump tries to revalue gold or silver like what Roosevelt did, right? You can imagine the opposition that will arise from that. But this way, with the tariffs, it's kind of like on everything, right? So if what I just told you is going to happen and gold and silver prices inevitably get revalued, right? That means like he did it under the radar. Nobody really, opposed to it.
Okay, so this is
Does it
interesting.
make
So
sense?
what,
Yeah,
yeah, so what I hear you saying is
yeah,
the United States has a debt to GDP ratio of, let's say, 125, 127%, or whatever the number is right now. And they need to get that down to a more manageable number, a less harmful position. So let's say 70% or whatever. So by implementing the tariffs, that the byproduct of that effect would be a revaluation of gold to say $4,000. And then that
yeah,
$4,000, whereas in the treasury minutes, from the development, you can use gold as you could take the value of gold to pay down some debt. And so it currently is, I believe, $42.22 or something is the valuation on the books at the Treasury, going all the way back, to pre-World War II. So you have a valuation of 42.22, and now it revalues at 4,000. So now they're going to take that, however many trillions to pay down the debt with changing the book value of gold from 42 to 4,000, let's say. I'm just picking a number. And that in turn gets the debt to GDP ratio from this dangerous position down to a much more manageable position, and puts the country on a path with everything else they're planning on doing to experience massive growth.
yeah. So you just described the why they want to revalue gold, right? I agree with that. It would just make their balance sheet that much more healthier, right? And but have you thought about why they would want to revalue silver to a higher price? Why they would want silver to go higher?
I have a few theories on that, but one of my
Yeah,
theories has to do with making it a little bit more difficult on China, because China is the world's manufacturer. With all the electrification of everything, their manufacturing requires boatloads of silver, and the world is currently seeing China as the cost-effective manufacturer of all of the components for the electrification movement. But if silver gets much more expensive, that might make other areas more competitive.
yeah, that's right. Basically, China is the factory of the world, right? China made stuff. It's not just 2025. China made stuff for the U.S. for a long time. But in the past, U.S. companies made a huge cut of profit from that manufacturing value chain. I'm talking about, like, good example is iPhone, right? The Apple makes 95% of the profit. Foxconn, which is not even a Chinese company, is a Taiwanese company operating in China, makes around 5% of the profit, right, from the sale of an iPhone. But what's changing now is we're just looping back to the beginning of our conversation with DeepSeek. China is manufacturing both on the hardware and software side, products and brand names that are in direct competition with the West. Is as good as what the West is making, and the West, especially the U.S., is no longer extracting a high percentage of margin from that Chinese manufacturing value chain. So what that means, in essence, is that the U.S. and the West, especially the U.S., because the U.S. is the one that is suppressing the price of silver, in my opinion. The U.S. is essentially subsidizing China with abnormally cheap silver. So I don't see that continuing. That's going to
Yeah,
stop.
and I think that's
Yeah,
interesting, because one way to bring home manufacturing here to the States in a competitive way, where you have this differential in cost of development, is to get an increase in the cost of development on the side that it enjoys cheaper development costs. So if you can get them to be more expensive, then you just became more competitive. Instead of you trying to lower costs, get them to become more expensive. One way to do that is with these input costs, specifically with silver. So it's very interesting, and it's something that we need to keep an eye on as investors, for sure.
Yeah, not only that, I mean, look at what China's doing with EVs, right? The U.S. has a choke on the world, you know, at a lot of times because the U.S. control the flow of oil in the world, right? The U.S. chokes China at the Straits of Malacca. That's where Singapore is, right? But China, if you notice, is decreasing its crude oil imports in the last 2 years. Now, why is that? It's not because China is in a recession, because Chinese electricity generation and electricity consumption went up in a straight line in the last couple of years. Didn't go down. So what is happening is that China, it has been successful in its EV strategy such that it's lessening its reliance on oil. You know, basically less reliance on U.S. controlled oil, right? But at the same time, for China to achieve that, to achieve the EV replacing, you know, all this oil import, what does China need? Silver. But the U.S. has been giving Chinese cheap silver. So do you see how that's not going to continue?
Yeah.
What you just said plus this, right? Like, it's not going to continue.
It makes all the sense in the world to me.
Yeah.
All right.
Anyway,
so let's move on to a question about war and weapons. During its 3-year war in Ukraine, Russia has introduced several new precision-guided munitions and drones with onboard AI target acquisition and navigation systems. Some of these are capable of hypersonic speeds and intercontinental range. So China is supplying the AI components for these in these advanced weapon systems, and a breakthrough like DeepSeek that dramatically increases capability and lowers cost of production and operation, that enables the Russian national security industrial base to produce much larger stockpiles of these armaments much faster and at lower costs in their modernized factories. How profound of a development and how much of a wake-up call for the Western world is DeepSeek when it comes to war and weapons development and proliferation?
It's definitely like a game changer, like you said, right? So you see these drones and these land drones, sea drones, air drones, they're going to be that much smarter going forward. What that means is that they're going to be more effective in killing personnel. That's something I don't think anybody wants to see, but I'm talking about civilians. But
right.
that's the path we going down. It's
and
actually,
cheaper, not only much more effective than precise, but cheaper to build, cheaper to roll out.
Yeah, it's a scary world, but I mean that's the path it's going. Basically, you're correct. Because now, if you can run DeepSeek on a laptop, imagine putting that DeepSeek algorithm in the drone. It's now possible, right? It's crazy.
It's mind-boggling.
Yes.
Yeah, where things can go, and you know, it's you know, the more this technology, this incredible technology is in the hands of more countries, the more the other countries are going to continue research, development, and application in order to one up or to counteract or whatever. So, you know, where does this stop? You know, it doesn't. It's only going to intensify clearly, especially as you know, manufacturing capability increases for smaller and smaller and smaller capability, like a drone. All right. Well, this has been a fantastic conversation. As always, I always enjoy and love talking with you. Before we wrap up here and I ask Eric our final question, I want to point everyone over to our Substack. Go to metalsandminers.substack.com. We post content on the consumer, economy, markets, artificial intelligence, individual metals and miners, and all the expert interviews that we conduct, just like this one with Eric. They're all up there. When you subscribe, we want to give you a free gift. It's a report that we wrote. It's based on the important Ray Dalio foundational premise titled, "If You Don't Own Gold, You Know Neither History Nor Economics." This free gift is a must-read for everyone on why we all should own gold. For our premium subscribers, we just launched something called the Inner Circle. It's a rotation of 2 to 3 monthly in-depth expert written analyses and insight reports into either the broader metals and miners market or into a very specific metal or specific miner. They're written by the same experts that you see interviewed on the YouTube channel. The first couple of reports have already been published, widely seen. If you have not seen them, you really need to. One of them is on a silver miner that looks like it's going to explode. And if we see the increase in silver price that Eric is predicting, then this is one of those silver miners that are going to greatly benefit. So head over to metalsandminers.substack.com, put in your email address to subscribe, receive the free gift on us. While you're there, check out the premium subscription that includes the Inner Circle. Also, I'm positive that you've enjoyed the conversation with Eric as much as I have. Please let him know. Hit the like and subscribe button and leave a comment below the video. Eric, at this point, with the information that we know and the information that we don't, and the assumption that there is much more about the future coming with development and proliferation of AI and how it's going to be configured and the costs and, the infrastructure needs, et cetera, how would you sum up the implications of the DeepSeek news?
It's a game changer, Gary. I think, like you said, the miniaturization of AI is going to happen. It's going to be deployed in drones, which are going to be used for war. So that's one aspect. The second aspect is that the appearance of DeepSeek is going to rock the U.S. Mag 7, who is heavily invested into AI. So we have to see how they pivot or how they spin this story, right? Microsoft, actually, I saw some news about Microsoft saying that DeepSeek may have some people that they knew from Microsoft. So there's some allegations already spreading in the space as to where how DeepSeek is able to develop something so advanced so quickly, right? So that's like a second aspect. And then thirdly, how it's going to affect China, how China is going to get an edge with this type of technology. And I think knowing China, there's going to be automation is probably going to go into hyperdrive in China in the next 10 years. That's my opinion on that. Midterm,
Eric,
even. Yeah.
Eric, thanks for coming on to Metals and Miners on such short notice and for being so generous with your time, analysis, and ideas. I always love spending the time and talking with you. Would you let folks know who are tuning in, where they could learn more about your work, how they can connect with you or find you?
You can find me on X at King Kong 9888. At King Kong 9888. That's my handle on X.
Okay, and is there a message you want to leave with everybody?
Be patient. If you're a precious metals investor or mining investor, just be patient. Our time will come.
Okay.
That's it. Yeah.
Well, I look forward to having you back on sometime soon, Eric. Thank you for being here with us. And everybody else, thanks for watching.
Thank you, Gary.
Point everyone over to our Substack. Go to metalsandminers.substack.com. We post content on the consumer, economy, markets, artificial intelligence, individual metals and miners, and all the expert interviews that we conduct, just like this one with Eric. They're all up there. When you subscribe, we want to give you a free gift. It's a report that we wrote. It's based on the important Ray Dalio foundational premise titled, "If You Don't Own Gold, You Know Neither History Nor Economics." This free gift is a must-read for everyone on why we all should own gold. For our premium subscribers, we just launched something called the Inner Circle. It's a rotation of 2 to 3 monthly in-depth expert written analyses and insight reports into either the broader metals and miners market or into a very specific metal or specific miner. They're written by the same experts that you see interviewed on the YouTube channel. The first couple of reports have already been published, widely seen. If you have not seen them, you really need to. One of them is on a silver miner that looks like it's going to explode. And if we see the increase in silver price that Eric is predicting, then this is one of those silver miners that are going to greatly benefit. So head over to metalsandminers.substack.com, put in your email address to subscribe, receive the free gift on us. While you're there, check out the premium subscription that includes the Inner Circle.